Welcome to the Endurance Drive podcast. Our mission is to share the key principles that structure our approach to endurance training and coaching. I'm Katie.
And I'm Elena.
And today we have a super, super special guest, and it's actually a podcast that's happening all in-house with the Endurance Drive. So we have our very own Colleen Geaumont, who is our social media chair and our gear chair and just a beloved member of our community here joining us. So Colleen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and all the kind words. You're going to make me blush right off the bat.
Luckily, it's an audio-only podcast, so no one will see. But before we do our interview with you, we actually wanted to do our usual starting segment, which is coaching and training insights. So, Elena, do you want to take the first one for coaching and training insights today?
Yeah, I was to say mine is just, I always tell everyone to stretch. I think it's a very common thing that we hear is stretching is important. And yet, even as a coach and as an athlete, I often find time to prioritize it or it just slips my mind or it's just not something I want to do after I finish a long workout. And so I've been trying to hold myself accountable by going to yoga classes. And even if I just don't get a good stretch throughout the rest of the week as much as I need, I just find that it's like a place and a time where I can go and know I'm going to take care of my body. And I'm not into like the power yoga, like what's the long, hard classes, but just recovery yoga that's focused on like me feeling how I'm feeling and stretching and taking time for myself has been really beneficial. And I would just encourage that to other athletes. Like we're not all perfect and we can't hit everything we want to hit, but if you're realizing that stretching is falling by the wayside, maybe just find some time to prioritize it as one block of yoga and do it a class with friends, and it might help.
I love that. That's such a good insight. And I definitely need to prioritize a little more stretching. So maybe I'll get on the yoga train too. I guess I can jump in with mine. So this has come up with a couple times recently with my athletes. And then I also experienced it the other day. So I think it's relevant. But we talk a lot about how important it is to really fuel your activity. So during activity and throughout the day. But I think maybe a big contributor to not feeling great in workouts that's related to fueling, but maybe gets a little bit pushed under the rug, is the idea of previous day fueling having a huge impact on your next day activity. So even if you're not training a lot on a given day, if you're not fueling all that well that day, then as you go into your workout the next day, especially something big, I think that's a huge place where you might be at that little bit of deficit. And so I had a couple athletes who had really, really big sessions over the weekend this past weekend, and they did not feel great even though they had an easy day the day before. And they both were like, I think it might have been a fueling the day before thing. And then I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I had a big bike on Sunday and I'd been kind of running around all day the day before. I didn't intentionally try to not eat enough, but I woke up that morning pretty hungry and I was like, uh-oh, does this mean that I'm going to have a rough bike? I did have a little bit of a rough bike, even though I fueled really, really well with hitting my carbs during it. So this is just an important reminder that you need to be fueling super well every day, and especially the day before something really, really big, because if you're not, that's not going to set you up for as much success the next day.
Yeah, that's a great one. I struggle with that too.
So Colleen, you know a ton about our segments because you make reels from all of our podcasts and you listen to them probably more than anybody else in the world. So thank you. We would love to have you join us for a coaching and training insight. So what have you picked up in the last couple of weeks?
Of course. Yeah. In the past few weeks, I think a big training insight for me has been around prolonged fatigue. So I work really long hours. I work for utility. And so when weather is bad, we work nonstop. So I have been working nonstop for the past 2 weeks. And I was still trying to squeeze in times to go to the gym and was feeling actually really good. And thinking, oh yeah, this won't affect me at all. I'm sleeping 4 hours and staring at a computer all the time, but I'm still able to lift weights just as heavy. Awesome. And then yesterday and today, I think it finally hit me and my body really has been kind of keeping the score. So even if you're feeling good during all of that craziness and you've got a lot of adrenaline and you're running off of just fumes, it does hit you later. And it's humbling, but to just also listen to your body and take the rest. So I just took it easy today and just trying to set myself up better for the next coming weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely that cumulative type of thing where you think you're fine until you're not fine. So I'm glad that you're able to take the rest and stuff, but that's a lot. And we got a little window into your career there, but I think maybe this is a good transition into your interview today to tell us your story, and you can start from there if you want to, but we love to hear kind of where you come from, especially your journey through sport as it pertains to our podcast, but also a little bit about you. So take it away.
Thanks. Yeah. So when it comes to the world of sport, I've always been a super active kid. I danced. I did kind of a lot of different sports. And I think I started to sort of catch on that whatever my older sister did for athletics, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do the other sport. I didn't want any comparison. So she did soccer. I did field hockey. She did basketball, I swam, and so I always have kind of liked to do my own thing in general too. So I grew up by the water and was always in love with being in the water. It was like beach days. They had to pull me out of the ocean after being in there for 6 hours. So I've always loved the water and finally started to swim come high school, got really into it. Swimming, for people who have swam on a team, whether it's club or high school, college, swim teams are very special. I think there's a really unique sense of community there that I had never experienced in a team. And on top of that, I went to an all-girls high school. So we were a really small swim team. We all had to really band together to teach each other. There were people who had swam for their entire life and girls who just jumped in the pool that first time and had never lap swam ever. So it was just this really fun, goofy group of girls, and all of my close friends that I made in high school basically came from that swim team. So the Macaulay swim team has a very strong part of my heart. And after that, I didn't do any organized athletics in college. I started getting into kind of just run recreationally, lift weights a little bit, and I started to do pageants. So my sort of view on exercise then switched to, all right, I'm going to the gym for this certain goal of, looking this way for aesthetics, and it was no longer like a team atmosphere or a sport per se. And then I slowly started to kind of move out of that. And over the summer in college, my college summer job was to lifeguard on the beach in Old Orchard, which is where I grew up. And Old Orchard, for people who don't know Old Orchard, is a little bit, they call it endearingly the Jersey Shore of Maine. So it's very, very touristy, and it's a lot of fun, but it's a wild beach, and it's very traditional. We wear the 2-piece red swimsuits, and we've got the little torps, so it's very fun, and I loved it. Great job. But through that, obviously, I got to continue swimming and running and more back on a team a little bit, because we would all work out in the mornings together. And I started working water safety for a triathlon there. They used to do the 70.3 in Maine, that's now up in Augusta, at Old Orchard. So it was an ocean swim. And so I'd be on the jet ski or the paddle board and doing all of that stuff. And one of the lifeguards, who was older, he was a lifeguard at Hampton Beach for forever. He'd done triathlons his whole life. He was like a national champion for his different age groups. And I was like, oh, Bruce, this looks so fun. I could never do this. And he was like, Colleen, you could absolutely do this. You should do one. It would be so fun. I was like, I've never ridden a road bike in my life. I could swim, but I don't know about any of that. And he's like, you should just try one. So then I just dove in, started training myself, did my first one, loved it, and signed up for 3 more after that. And then soon started getting really, really into it. And then that's how I found the endurance track.
Wow. There's so much in there that I want to apply. I feel like this happens pretty much every time that we hear someone's life story. There's so much rich stuff. But maybe something that we could go back to a little bit is I want to hear a little bit more about your experience kind of optimizing for endurance versus optimizing for aesthetics, because that's maybe a perspective that not everyone has, but I'm sure is really just like a huge focus in the beauty pageants world.
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole world of pageants is very complex. There's different systems, Some have really long interview portions, some have really short ones, and it's all, can be geared towards different looks, different types of personalities, all of that. And so I definitely felt like it brought more attention to my body image, probably quicker than I would have liked to. And then sort of getting older and hitting that college spot where, you're no longer in high school, but you're not fully developed. You're in this little in-between area. And that's when I kind of transitioned into the Miss category versus the teen. And so that's when, all of the pageants are going to have swimsuit. And there's a swimsuit portion. And so it was, all right, I got to go to the gym every day. I got to be doing my cardio. I got to be trying to do some weights. I've got to get to this certain image. That's the goal. Not to get stronger, not to get faster, anything like that. I have to be, they call it, quote unquote, stage ready. And so I really sort of shifted my whole perspective on exercise in that way and got a lot more fixated on all of the things that go around that as well. And the nutrition of it all, or lack of nutrition, and diet culture, unhealthy, experience with exercise. And granted, this is not everybody's experience with pageants. Some people can do pageants and never have an issue with any of this. But it soon became that was the goal, I gotta look good for the stage. And then it's even more amplified if you win a state title and you're going to nationals, where you're going, oh, I'm not just competing against, the other girls in the state of Maine. I'm competing against the best of, this is Miss California. She's going to be a supermodel. I got to look really good now. And so just that whole shift really disconnected me, I think, from the joy of movement and it becoming really about the outcome in not a very correct, or what I think is not an accurate correlation between being healthy and physically fit and having a thin body, because those two do not equal each other.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that you were mentioning earlier in your story that I was loving was your love of the team, of the swim team and then competitive environment, and then finding the team again on the lifeguarding staff. And I'm a little bit curious in the pageant world. I just know nothing about it. And what is that community like? What did you have a team around you? Was that part of the problem, or were you finding support in other ways? What did that look like from a community standpoint?
Yeah, there's a few aspects of that. That's a really interesting question too. One that I don't get a lot when I talk about pageants at all. They're like, "Oh, that's weird." All right, but but no, certain systems I think are, to be pretty candid, friendlier than others. And I definitely felt like in the teen pageants, it was a lot of girls just there to have fun and meet each other and, get to dance or do their talent on stage and have a fun time. And it gets a lot more competitive when you get to the Miss. And there are some relationships that you can make with the girls that are friendly. You are helping one another backstage, but there is that cliche sort of, at the end of the day, we are all competing against each other. But a lot of girls, especially, they say, if you want to be successful in the pageant world, there's some things that you have to have. And I think it can kind of be similar to a lot of elite athletics or competitions, which is money. You have to be able to afford it and have a coach and have the flexibility and ability to travel and go to all these places. And so I did have a coach for both the teen and the Miss pageants that I did. And the coach was challenging for me because I was a really high achiever, both in teen and Miss categories. And it would be hours of interview prep, and it was very intense, where it's not just, I didn't make that shot, or I didn't really do a fast 50 there. Let me just get back in the pool. It was like, that sentence you said didn't sound smart. If you want to sound smart, like, do it again. And just, it will wear on you a little bit. And it's all in, I think, just like with any coaching dynamic, it's all in, they want you to do better, but sometimes that can be damaging, especially to somebody that's already really hard on themselves. So I think one of the biggest things that sticks in my head when it comes to body image and pageants is, for one of the first Miss pageants I did, I had to find the right swimsuit, and we were looking through all of the things with the coach, and she was saying, no, that cut's not going to look good on you. You need to buy this kind. You need to do this, all this stuff. It took us like 4 hours to find a swimsuit that she thought that would even look suitable on me. And then, all right, order it, get it, time to do like practice in it. So you'll do walking practice, and so you'll do kind of like a dress rehearsal for the pageant, kind of. And so did walking practice in my suit and my heels, and here I am, very exposed in my high heels and practicing walking and turning. And afterwards, I stood in front of her, and she pointed to the different parts of my body that I needed to change before the pageant. And I think back on my body at that time, it's kind of really hard for me to conceptualize. One, because that's not how the human body works. You can't just say, oh, I think this little spot on your hip is too big. You got to go figure that out. Good luck. Hope you do. And also, I was, I think, 21 and already very small. So I know that I wasn't healthy during that time either. So to think about that and go, okay, well, what am I not going to eat today again? And how am I going to fix this? Because if I don't fix this, then I'm not going to win. So I think just like any coaching relationship, there is that potential for it to boost you, but also to, wear on you and become toxic.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds really, really brutal, having a coach point at you in different ways. I think one thing that also made me think of was, it's like this weird juxtaposition of the confidence that you're putting out when you're exposing yourself for a performance like that versus like the confidence that you're internally feeling in yourself and your body. And I'm wondering if you could maybe break that down a bit more of how that felt, and maybe like how you started to move into other sports, what that felt like in the performance versus the internal felt way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I kind of mentioned, I grew up dancing, and I was always a very shy, introverted kid. If you can believe it or not now, listening to me, how much I can yap, I was a super, super shy, awkward kid. And for me, when I danced and got on the stage, my mom always used to say, like, that's when you come alive. And it was like all of that shyness went away, and I was like, spotlight's on me, time to perform. And it just kind of melted away. And I felt that way when it came to pageants in the beginning, where it was this time for me to get on stage to perform. And so I think there is this big part of, I could be an anxious mess, and then I would hit the stage and go, okay, like, it's time to turn it on. Like, I think they talk a lot about how Beyonce talks about how she has two parts. She's got Beyonce and she's got Sasha Fierce. Like, Sasha Fierce is on the stage, and I'd be like, okay, like, here we go, time to flip the switch. And it's fun too to do that and to have those sides, but it's also really challenging. On the inside, you're rattled. I would be so anxious for days and backstage, and it's a lot. And I think, that can be somewhat relatable. Like, if you have a really big race in the endurance world beforehand that morning, I don't know about you guys, but my heart rate feels like it's a million beats per minute higher. But once you get going, you feel confident and good about yourself. But I think kind of the end product of that's different is I can get on the stage and work through those insecurities and feel good about myself. But at the end of the day, how I do isn't entirely up to me. It's really up to the interpretation of the judges. And that's tough. So I could have the best day in the world and some judge could just say, you know what, we had a blonde girl who won last year. We don't really want another blonde girl this year. So we're going to go with the other one. And whereas with endurance, it's like I'm feeling strong or I'm feeling crappy. But when I finish this race and I cross the line, like I'm getting my medal, I did this and I put all that work in and I feel strong, not I put all this work in and somebody didn't think I did good. It kind of brings that ownership back to yourself and makes you feel like you're in charge of your own outcome more than I would say the pageant world.
Yeah. And it sounds like, I mean, that was in some ways like a healthy transition because there are these different mechanisms of rewarding hard work and everything. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how, you know, you have this very direct, like coaching relationship, intense perception of body that's all related to aesthetics. How did that change for you once you got into the endurance world? Because there, I think we've talked on this podcast a lot about how there are a lot of body pressures, especially for female athletes, but they can be a lot more subtle. Do you feel like that was an internal thing? And just maybe talk us through how that evolved for you once you switched into doing triathlon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was something that the seed was there with pageants and just my general experience with body image. And then going into an elite area kind of poured a little water on the seed where I started this new sport and I was really excited about it and I really, really liked it and I wanted to get good at it. And the people that I was watching or the books that I was reading to try and teach myself, I remember telling you about this, Katie, where I was cleaning out last time that I moved. I was cleaning my storage unit that had all of my books and stuff. And I found a book that I had that was, you know, your perfect race weight. And it was calculating, you know, what your right weight to be an elite athlete who is fast. And according to this book, which apparently this book knew all of my genetics and my history and was going to tell me exactly what the right thing was. But I do think there's this correlation of people who are high achievers and want to find the best way to be the best. And I really leaned into that hard and never had been exercising as much as I was then either. So going from, you know, some more moderate stuff to then all of a sudden I'm burning, I don't know how much, and just not replacing anything, and got really focused on counting calories, counting macros, all of this stuff. And I got small very quick because I wasn't as active as that ever in my life. And I had people telling me that I looked like an athlete now. And I was training and I was doing well. And then it all caught up to me, as it does for everybody. And it's not sustainable and it's not healthy. But I think they kind of bled into each other more than I would have anticipated.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious to hear more of the transition then to finding like the new identity around endurance sports, and how, as you developed that identity, like did that identity coincide with realizing that things could be done differently from a fueling perspective, or was it the feeling perspective and then you kind of found a different kind of happy medium or confidence in yourself and that helped? Like, what came first in that place?
I think it was a forced realization because I crashed and burned so hard. I think I had a really big tipping point that made me look at how I looked at exercise in general, and this idea of I now have this sport in this community that I love, and I don't think I'm going to be able to keep doing it at this rate with how I'm treating my body, how I'm going about this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. The crash and burn phenomenon is not too uncommon, unfortunately. I think we've all felt a different kind of crash and burn. I guess then the next step is, how did you find the right way to proceed at that point? Like, you've been taught for so long, it has to be this one way. What does it look like to relearn and re-educate yourself?
A lot. It sucks. It it does. It's very earth shattering because you have an idea of what is right, and you have a whole culture, and the diet culture is a huge business, and they're telling you for your entire life how you're supposed to go about things. And I basically was so fixated on becoming more and more in control of my food, my fueling, my overall success in being an athlete, that I would restrict so much. I would be in starvation mode, and then I would binge, and then the cycle continued. And basically, I started to try and find nutritionists because I wanted more control. I wanted them to give me a list of what I was supposed to eat and follow it. And there was no temptation anymore for me to eat. And so upon doing this, and the first one say, I don't feel comfortable working with you, and I think you need to speak to a different type of nutritionist. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, what? Like this? Me? What? What do you mean? And she was like, I think you need to talk to somebody who specializes in nutrition for eating disorders. And I was like jaw on the floor. I was like, what? No, he's a complete denial. And so then I talked to another nutritionist, and they said the same thing. And so I ended up working with a nutritionist here in Maine, and basically it's a lot of tearing down the house before you can build it. And one of the first exercises was to list every food that in my head was forbidden. They called the forbidden foods. Foods that I didn't allow in my house, would never allow myself to eat. Wrote this all down, and we were talking about it, and she's like, now let's think about what does that leave? And I looked at the list, and it kind of hit me. I was like, that leaves really nothing. That leaves, chicken and a little bit of rice and some vegetables. I was like, okay, maybe I'm seeing you've got a point here. It was all okay. And then going one by one through all of those forbidden foods, and doing that for consistently working with her once a week, and doing other types of therapy for a consistent 2 years. And this was all during being an endurance athlete. So I hit this huge point where I was sick and injured all the time training. And, we hear it again and again and again. And then I started getting treatment, and I remember I gained, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 pounds. And that was the most horrifying thing to me ever. But I had to continually remind myself, and was easily reminded too, as I continued to train, that was my healthy body, the one that I was in now. Where before I would do, I think the longest bike ride I did was 40 miles, and I felt like I was going to die. And I was tired and exhausted for the rest of the week. I remember when I, started to get healthier, and that summer I was doing, I think I did 5 centuries, and I've never felt stronger. And I was like, holy crap, this is what it feels to be able to bike up a mountain. This is crazy. And it was really good confirmation for myself to not give up, to not give into those unhealthy habits, those dangerous habits that snowball so quickly, because I was able to do the things that I wanted to do with the people that I wanted to do it with, and not thinking the whole time, oh my God, what am I going to have? What am I going to eat? Food, always in the back of your head, and just, you get more control over your life.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think we see so much power in bringing these stories to light, but it also reflects exactly the message that we're trying to share, which is if you just fuel the work that you're doing and honor where your body's supposed to be, that is where you see these huge, incredible performance gains and life gains and happiness gains, and it all really goes together. So first wanted to just say thank you for sharing that.
And you're welcome.
I'd love to maybe transition us a little bit to then talk about like where you're at now, because I don't think we've even gotten there, but you are an incredible strength trainer. Is that what we should even call you? You're an incredible lifter. You're super strong, and I'm always really impressed with that. But that seems to be kind of like a third chapter in your athletic journey that I'd love to hear a little bit more about, kind of comparing it to the endurance stuff, what motivated that switch, how you think about it in terms of all these topics we've been talking about now that you really are super strong in the gym.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you can just call me muscle lady. But no. But yeah, the sort of the next chapter in my life is being an athlete. I don't know if you could call me an athlete. I don't know. Maybe everybody is an athlete if they do.
Yes.
Definitely an athlete. Oh, thank you. Has been a lot more strength training, weightlifting. So obviously I was really big into endurance sports and was doing 3 to 5 races a summer. That was my life. And even with treatment for my eating disorder, I still felt like I would get injured more and more here and there. And part of that has to do with just my genetics. I have a bad immune system. I have arthritis. I struggle with like some chronic health stuff. And my level of exercise is different to maybe what somebody else who doesn't struggle with those can sustain or would be beneficial. So that being said, I, learned to pare down my training, all of this stuff, and wanted to support that through getting stronger. So started going to the gym more, and again, it was a little bit more supplemental. And then I had a really big disaster, which to put it lightly, that Katie got to be privy to as well throughout this sort of sub-chapter between those. I got a really bad neck injury. This summer it'll be 2 years. And so it was no big particular event. A lot of people are like, what happened? Did you get in a ski accident? Did you get in a car accident? Nothing. I had some pain going on behind my shoulder blades that felt muscular, a little bit odd, and had been getting that treated through chiropractic, through a little bit of massage. And then I had a workout one day, came home and just laid on the couch and cried and was like, something is not right. And it wasn't. Sort of long story short, I had herniated a disc in my neck, and it wasn't just a little bit, it was a lot of it. And so I tried for about 4 months solid to be doing everything to avoid surgery. I did not want to have surgery. Everybody was going, you're so young, you don't need surgery. But I was in a neck brace. The nerve pain was constant. Anything I took didn't help it. Anyway, fast forward, I ended up getting surgery. Katie was my lovely nurse after surgery. And then that slowly started to heal from there. And overall, it really adjusted my perspective on exercise once again, where it was this whole realization that, even if I'm doing everything right in my control, my body might be a little bit different. Or sometimes, I don't know if I can swear, but sometimes shit happens. And sometimes it's all out of your control. So what is the best way for me to move forward so I can be active and enjoy movement throughout my life? So through recovery, I really shifted a lot more of my attention and energy into weightlifting and found I was getting a lot of enjoyment from it. It reminded me when I started to first get into triathlon, where I would go into the gym, I would lift weights, I could see that I was feeling stronger. I could see that, I couldn't raise my left arm above my shoulder, 3 months ago, and now I can, and do 10 curls with a 5-pound dumbbell. I was like, this is the best feeling ever. Like, I couldn't use my arm, and here I am. And then sort of that growth, that objective growth of I'm going there, I'm feeling stronger, I'm feeling safer in my body because I know what the things I'm doing are helping to protect it more, really helped fuel my love for movement again. And have just been doing that more and more since then. And it's just always really nice. There's a really great community too when it comes to gyms, and a good gym and good people at the gym. I look forward to it every day, especially as somebody who lives by myself. Like, I get to go see my gym buddies, I get to go and lift weights, and I get to feel strong, and I can't wait. So it's definitely been this collection of mind, body, stress relief. And that's what I've found when going to lift weights again.
Wow, that's such a cool story. Thanks for sharing, because it feels like I can see the trajectory of finding different ways of movement through the years, and they all had different purposes, but now it's like you found something that the purpose is maybe just how it feels, and it's not even about performance necessarily, but it's like just showing up for the feeling of the entire thing. You have the community, you have the movement, you have all of that. And I think it's so real that people take for granted movement when, especially when going through injury. Like, we realize that when you are faced with injury, how lucky we are to be able to move our bodies in any way that we choose to, and definitely gives you great perspective. So I'm kind of curious if that's okay to dig a little bit deeper on that injury, because that is a huge thing. I know we kind of just did a gloss over, but like maybe in the moment when you were saying that you were struggling for a few months of just how to approach not getting surgery, or like, what is this? I'm really not in a good spot. How did you actually like cope with that from a physical perspective when your options for movement were more limited, and like strategies for getting yourself through that mentally?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is something that through talking about this exact thing with people or on social media that I've really realized that so many people are facing more and more, or have faced. It was a really, really tough time as people who are active, and we get a lot of our stress relief, our hobbies, our enjoyment from this type of movement, and then you're suddenly at 0.0 negative below that. And so it was incredibly challenging, where it wasn't just like in the past of, oh, I have a stress fracture, that stinks, I'm in a boot, oh well, I'll rest. It was, I am technically disabled right now, and I couldn't sleep laying down. I had to sleep sitting up. I was on so many medications to just exist, and none of them really helped at all. I had to struggle to even get an MRI in the first place. Katie knows this story all too well. But there's a big undersell of pain report coming from women in the medical field, where I have strong confidence in saying that if I was a man and went to the ER and said, hey, I have a neck injury, something's not right, they would throw me in an MRI right away. But that is not what happened to me. And I know my experience is like quadrupled if you are in other parts of minorities. And it is extremely frustrating to know that and experience a tidbit of that in the medical field. But finally figuring out what was going on was part of it, then treating it and hoping that it was just going to get better, that I was going to wake up and finally the acupuncture was going to be helping, finally the PT was going to be working. And so for those 4 months, I was doing acupuncture twice a week, PT twice a week, massage. I was on, like I said, a lot of meds, doing oral steroids. I was really throwing everything that you possibly could at the wall, because I was terrified of getting surgery. I didn't want it to get worse. I'm young. It was this whole, I had to grapple with this. I shouldn't be doing this. It should just fix itself. My body should be more durable than this. And if I just work hard enough, it'll go away. And I had one surgeon say, I could do surgery. You're at the point where we could do surgery. And I didn't want to get surgery in Maine. I think there's a lot of things medically you can do in Maine, but I don't know if I would say I would advocate for people to get major surgery in the state of Maine. I love you, Maine, but maybe go to Boston. So eventually got surgery down from a really great surgeon, Dr. Fogel. Shout out to Dr. Fogel. You did a good job. But I had asked him, because I'm kind of weird, where I was like, can I have the disc that you take out of my body? Because I was like, I want to see it in a little jar, and I want to look at it and be like, yeah, screw you. I'm doing so much better now. And he's like, I can't do that. It's a biohazard. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But and I was like, can you take pictures? Can you do something? So he ended up taking a picture of the nerve and like disc material that was all tangled in my spinal canal. And seeing that picture afterwards was extremely validating, because that's a significant amount of things in your body that was causing you pain. And for being in that amount of pain for 4 months and thinking, maybe I'm just going crazy, let me just keep pushing. And you see that and you go, okay, yep, this was the right call. This is what needed to happen.
Yeah. Wow. I can't believe you got, I think it's so cool that you could have had that looking at it and be like, this is my motivator. This is my little disc that was in my body the whole time. But yeah, it almost, actually, I was thinking when you were saying that it almost ties back to your training tidbit at the very beginning of, if you keep pushing through the fatigue or like through the pain or the issues, like it's going to catch up to you. And it sounds like it did. It's like maybe another tidbit of listening to your body and making the right decision. But yeah, wow, that's a big story. Glad you figured that out.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for hanging in there. Actually, and to tie that one up, Colleen, what would you say to others who were like experiencing a serious traumatic injury like that? Or we've had a lot of friends who've been in bike crashes, like things like that, where you're going to be out for a long time. What would you say to those folks just to help them get through it?
It's so corny, but be really, really kind to yourself and acknowledge that it's your own journey. Being around a lot of other people who are still training or competing at an elite level, and you're sitting there, freshly stitched up, and you're waving off to your friends as they go off on a 60-mile bike ride, and you're sitting there reading a book. And whether that be, you're injured then or you're recovering from surgery, it's really challenging. So I would say find people in your life that are your friends outside of just the endurance world, and know that your friends who are your friends through the endurance world aren't just your friends because you're capable of biking. They are around you and part of your community because they like you. And it's not just about if you can hang with the pack on the bike ride, or you can hop in the pool and notice the people who are there for you, and then put your time and support and trust in those people, and be patient. Don't push it back into it. That would be my advice.
That's really good advice. Thanks for sharing that. Maybe we'll finish up with a question about your involvement with the Endurance Drive, because you were an athlete with the Endurance Drive, kind of still are, but then you became our gear and our social media person. And if you don't follow the Endurance Drive Instagram, you need to stop what you're doing and do it right now, because Colleen does such a great job on that. But I'd love to dig in a little bit on just your process of doing our social, especially, and making videos, because that's something that you have a full-time job. This is not your full-time job, and yet you're so good at it. And we love that creative outlet that you have. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, when it comes to all the social media stuff, I've always been a big cinematographer, photographer, all of that stuff. It's always just been part of what I like to do. From a young age, I had like a Barbie camcorder, and I would make small films and then sit my mom down, and she would lovingly watch them. And she still has them. Still, clearly they were cinematic masterpieces, of course. But it's always been something that I would love to do and taps into more of that artistic, creative side. But yeah, just through sort of the natural progression of being part of the endurance drive and us going on adventures, I was always taking my phone out, always taking pictures, always taking videos. And it's something that I love to do because, and again, this might sound so corny, I just love my people. And I love having these little snippets of memories and being able to think about, oh my God, remember that crazy bike ride we did? Remember when we hiked up and we almost died on the mountain? Like, here's this picture. And it really transports you back. And so being able to encapsulate that and then share it with people. And I also love the idea of like, look at how cool my friends are. Like, look at how awesome they are. And it gives me a lot of joy to just create that and share that too. And hopefully it motivates people not to just get up and, go do your training today. But yeah, this is about an experience. It's about a type of life and environment, and just being able to share that and be outside with the people that you love. And so I really enjoy being able to create those types of things and tell people's stories and our stories.
I love that. Yeah. Share the happiness and the adventure and the stoke with everyone is just, it comes through. So thanks for everything you do. It's awesome, Colleen.
Yeah, that was so well said. And you do such a great job with it. And honestly, we would love having you there, even if you weren't just whipping out your phone at all times. But it is a really nice perk so just so you know, you're very valued for things too.
Sort of touch on that whole, that whole other point.
Just to dismantle that complex a little bit.
Thank you.
But I think the broader point here is just, normally you're behind the camera, and it was really awesome to get to have you kind of front and center in this episode today. I think your story is so meaningful. And I think honestly, we could do like a Colleen episode 3, a Colleen episode 4, like on so many different elements of what you said here. But for the sake of brevity, we might end this one around now. But you're our gear chair, so we can't finish the episode without doing a gear pick of the week that includes you. So Colleen, would you like to go first with your gear pick of the week for our listeners?
Wonderful. All right, drum roll. So as we sort of touched on in the beginning with fatigue, and if you know me, I am horrible at sleeping. I would love to be good at sleeping, and that is something that I work on. So my gear pick of the week is this sleep mask that I have and have had for a little bit. It's from the company Manta, and their little logo is like a manta ray. And it's their Pro Sleep Mask. So basically, they're these cups that go around your eyes so you don't have pressure on your eyes, and it's 100% light blocking. And they're not the cutest. These are not for style, they're for function. But they work really, really well. And if I take a nap on the couch in the middle of the day, I can keep all my shades open and it's bright, and I just put the mask on. It's 100% blackout. So that's my recommendation.
That's such a good recommendation. Yeah, sleep is the 5th leg of the triathlon behind only nutrition and swim, bike, run. So I highly recommend.
I might have to upgrade from wrapping my childhood blanket around my eyes, and that's my only method. So
you got to nail down that Manta Sleep Mask sponsorship. Alina, you want to take it away next?
Yeah, mine is a running belt. It's a naked running belt. I feel like vests are really popular, but if I don't have to take a vest, I would prefer not to, because I just don't like the feeling of having more stuff on my chest. I just like the feeling of being very free and like that open feeling of running for a while. So this belt is great because it's like sits on my hips really well, and they have a bunch of different sizes, so you can like measure your size and get what's right for you. And then it fits 2 flasks of water if I want it. Like all of my gels, like I could do almost all of my long runs. I can just use my belt and not my vest, which is great. So yeah, I am a huge fan. It just makes me feel a lot more free, especially when I'm running trails. So naked belt, everyone.
That's a great recommendation. Okay, so mine can be paired with the naked running belt, maybe not with the sleep mask because it's more of an active piece. But I'm going to recommend my favorite running shorts. So they are made by On, which is like, you may know them as the running shoe brand that was more functional, but then got like sponsored. And now a lot of pros wear On running shoes. I really like their running shorts, so I will link the exact pair in the show notes, but they're great because they have built-in spandex underneath and the shorts on the outside. And I have like searched high and low to find the perfect running shorts. And I think I have found them, at least for me. So highly recommend those shorts. Good pockets. You can stick a jaw in there. You can stick your keys in there and they don't ride up. And they've been pretty great. So highly recommend. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Colleen, thank you again so much for being here. It was awesome to have you. You did such a great job. And I'm sure our listeners are going to be so excited to hear more about the mysterious and amazing girl behind the camera.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I think you guys are doing such an awesome job. And it's nice to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, we'll have you back real soon.
Thanks, Colleen. That was awesome.
Thanks.